The alarm screamed through the corridors of the Valiant, and Jake Morrison ran toward the medical bay with his equipment bag bouncing against his back. He had been a combat medic for 3 years now, but his heart still pounded every time those alarms went off. Outside the ship's thick windows, space itself seemed to be on fire. Bright flashes of weapons fire lit up the darkness as human and alien vessels fought in a deadly dance. "All medical personnel to stations," the voice crackled over the intercom. "We have incoming wounded from the diplomatic escort. Multiple casualties reported." Jake burst through the medical bay doors and immediately started preparing supplies. The war with the Velthran Empire had been going on for 8 months, and nobody really knew why it started anymore. First contact had gone wrong somehow, and now 2 species were killing each other over a misunderstanding that had spiraled out of control. Recent weeks had brought hope, though. Peace talks were happening. Diplomatic channels had opened. Both sides wanted to stop the bleeding. That made today's attack even worse. Someone had ambushed a Velthran diplomatic convoy, and the Valiant had been close enough to respond. Jake's commanding officer, a stern woman named Lieutenant Commander Hayes, rushed in behind him. "Morrison, we're bringing in aliens," she said quickly. "Velthran wounded. The peace talks depend on us saving these people. Understand?" Jake nodded. He had never treated a Velthran before. Hell, he had barely seen one except through a weapons scope. But he was a medic. His job was to save lives, not take them. That was what he told himself every night when the nightmares came. The first wounded arrived within minutes. Human soldiers carried them in on stretchers, and Jake got his first real look at the Velthrans. They were humanoid, but taller, with skin that shimmered with faint purple and blue patterns. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, with vertical pupils like a cat. Despite their alien appearance, their pain looked exactly the same as human pain. They groaned and cried out in their own language as the medical team worked frantically. Jake moved between patients, doing what he could. Burns from energy weapons, broken bones from explosive decompression. One Velthran soldier had a piece of shrapnel embedded in her side, and Jake worked carefully to remove it while she hissed in pain through her sharp teeth. He was so focused on his work that he almost missed the commotion at the door. "Make way. Priority patient incoming." 2 human soldiers carried in another stretcher, and Jake's breath caught. The Velthran on this stretcher wore different clothing than the soldiers, something elegant and clearly expensive despite being torn and blood-stained. Her skin patterns glowed with a brighter intensity, and she wore a circlet of some silver metal around her forehead. Even injured and unconscious, she looked important. "That's the princess," one of the soldiers whispered. "Princess Lyria." She was leading the diplomatic convoy. Lieutenant Commander Hayes rushed over, her face pale. "Morrison, get over here now!" Jake ran to the stretcher and immediately began assessing the princess's injuries. It was bad, very bad. She had multiple wounds, but the worst was a deep laceration across her chest that was bleeding heavily. The blood was darker than human blood, almost purple, and it smelled strange, like copper mixed with something floral. "I need blood for transfusion," Jake called out. "What's her type?" "We don't know," Hayes said, her voice tight with stress. "We don't have Velthran blood. We don't have anything compatible. Morrison, if she dies, this war never ends. Do you understand me? The peace talks die with her." Jake's hands moved on autopilot, applying pressure to the worst wound while his mind raced. The princess was dying in front of him. He could see it in the way her breathing had become shallow and rapid. Her alien physiology was failing. Without blood, she would be dead in minutes. Then he remembered something from his advanced medical training. Sometimes in desperate situations, incompatible blood was better than no blood at all. It might buy time. It might cause the patient's system to fight back and produce its own blood faster. It was a terrible option, but it was the only option. "I'm going to try a human transfusion," Jake said. Hayes stared at him. "That could kill her faster." "She's dying now," Jake said. "At least this gives her a chance." He did not wait for permission. Jake rolled up his sleeve and grabbed the transfusion kit. His hands were steady as he inserted the needle into his own arm and started the flow. Human blood began traveling through the tube toward the dying alien princess. "Morrison, what's your blood type?" Hayes asked. "O negative," Jake said. "Universal donor. If any human blood has a chance of working, it's mine." The medical bay fell silent except for the beeping of monitors and the hiss of life support systems. Everyone watched as Jake's blood flowed into Princess Lyria's body. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the princess's body suddenly convulsed. The monitors went crazy. Jake thought he had killed her and his stomach dropped, but then the convulsing stopped. The princess's breathing steadied. The bleeding slowed, then stopped entirely. Her wounds actually seemed to be closing themselves, healing at a speed that should have been impossible. The silver circlet on her head began to glow with a soft light. "It's working," Hayes whispered in disbelief. "Dear God, it's actually working." Jake felt strange, dizzy. The room tilted sideways and he realized he had given too much blood. Way too much. He had been so focused on saving the princess that he had not paid attention to his own body's limits. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was the princess's eyes opening, those strange alien eyes focusing directly on him with an expression he could not read. When Jake woke up, everything was wrong. The ceiling above him was not the familiar gray metal of the Valiant's medical bay. It was smooth and white, with soft lights that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The air smelled different, cleaner somehow, with that same floral scent he had noticed in the princess's blood. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. His head spun and nausea washed over him. A hand pressed gently but firmly against his shoulder, pushing him back down. Jake turned his head and saw a Velthran standing beside his bed. This one wore white robes that marked her as medical personnel. "Rest, human," the Velthran said in accented but clear English. "You gave too much blood. You nearly died. Where am I?" Jake asked. His throat was dry, his voice rough. "You are in the Royal Medical Facility on Velthran Prime," the alien doctor said. "You have been unconscious for 2 days. 2 days." Jake's mind struggled to process that. "The princess?" "Princess Lyria lives because of you," the doctor said. Her vertical pupils studied him with an intensity that made Jake uncomfortable. "But what you did has caused a situation that no one fully understands yet." Before Jake could ask what that meant, the door to his room opened. 3 Velthrons entered, and even in his weakened state, Jake could tell these were important people. They moved with authority and wore elaborate clothing decorated with symbols he did not recognize. The one in the center was a tall female Velthran who wore a crown of that same silver metal. Her skin patterns glowed brighter than any he had seen, and her eyes held an intensity that made him want to look away. "Lieutenant Jake Morrison," the crowned Velthran said. Her voice was deep and commanding. "I am Queen Cerinthia, ruler of the Velthran Empire and mother to Princess Lyria. You saved my daughter's life." Jake tried to sit up again, and this time, the doctor helped him into a sitting position. "I was just doing my job, Your Majesty. I'm a medic. I save lives." "You did more than save her life," the Queen said. She moved closer, and Jake could see something like concern in her alien features. "When you gave her your blood, something happened. Something that has not occurred in 10,000 years of Velthran history." One of the other Velthrons stepped forward, an older male with patterns that had faded to a pale silver. "The human created a sanguine oath," he said. "By mixing his blood with royal blood, he has become bound to our bloodline. It is a sacred connection that ties his life force to Princess Lyria's. He is now part of the royal line itself." Jake stared at them, not understanding. "I don't know what that means." "It means," Queen Cerinthia said slowly, "that your life and my daughter's life are now connected in ways that we are only beginning to understand. It means that you cannot simply return to your people and forget this happened. It means that everything has changed, Lieutenant Morrison. For you, for my daughter, and perhaps for both our species." Jake felt cold despite the warm air of the room. He had just wanted to save a life. He had just wanted to do the right thing. Now these aliens were telling him that he had somehow tied himself to their royal family, through an ancient tradition he knew nothing about. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. The Queen looked at him for a long moment. "Now," she said, "you will meet my daughter, and together we will all discover the answer to that question." As the Queen turned to leave, Jake lay back against the bed and stared at the alien ceiling. He had joined the military to help people, to make a difference. He had never imagined that one act of desperation would change his entire life. He had saved a princess, and somehow that simple act had bound him to an alien empire in ways he could not yet comprehend. Outside his window, he could see the capital city of Velthran Prime. 3 days after waking up in the alien medical facility, Jake was finally strong enough to walk. The Velthran doctors had been amazed at how quickly he recovered. They said humans healed faster than they expected. Jake did not tell them that he still felt weak and dizzy every time he stood up for too long. He was a soldier. Showing weakness in enemy territory seemed like a bad idea, even if these particular enemies had saved his life. A royal guard came to escort him to the palace throne room. The guard was massive, even for a Veltran, and carried a weapon that crackled with blue energy. He did not speak to Jake during the long walk through crystal corridors. Jake used the time to study his surroundings. Everything in the palace was beautiful in a way that made him feel out of place. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. Water flowed in channels built into the floor, creating a constant peaceful sound. Art that he could not begin to understand decorated every surface. They passed other Veltrans in the hallways. All of them stopped to stare at Jake. Some looked curious. Others looked angry or disgusted. A few looked afraid. Jake kept his eyes forward and tried not to think about the fact that he was completely alone on an alien world with no way to contact his own people. The throne room doors were 30 feet tall and covered in symbols that seemed to move when Jake was not looking directly at them. They swung open silently, and the guard gestured for him to enter. Jake stepped into the largest room he had ever seen. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadows. Hundreds of Veltrans filled the space, all wearing elaborate clothing that marked them as nobility or important officials. At the far end of the room, Queen Cerinthia sat on a throne that looked like it had been carved from a single massive crystal. Princess Lyria stood beside her mother's throne. Jake had not seen her since the medical bay on the Valiant. She looked completely different now. Healthy, regal. Her skin patterns glowed with vibrant colors, and she wore a dress of deep blue that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. She was beautiful in an alien way that Jake's brain struggled to process. When her eyes met his, her expression was cold and unreadable. "Approach," Queen Cerinthia commanded. Jake walked down the center of the room. The crowd of Veltrans whispered and murmured as he passed. He heard words in their language that he did not understand, but the tone made their feelings clear. These people did not want him here. He stopped at the base of the throne and did his best to stand at attention like a soldier. The Queen studied him in silence for a long moment. "Lieutenant Jake Morrison," she finally said, "you have been unconscious for days, but we have not been idle. I have been in communication with your human leadership. They are very interested in having you returned." Hope flared in Jake's chest. "I'd like to go home, Your Majesty." "I'm sure you would," the Queen said. "Unfortunately, the situation is more complicated than you understand. Advisor Kelthrin, please explain to our guest what he has done." The old Velthran who had spoken in the medical facility stepped forward. He carried a book bound in what looked like metal. His voice was formal and precise as he spoke. 10,000 years ago, the Velthran people were scattered across many worlds, fighting amongst themselves. A great queen unified us by establishing the Sanguine Oath. Those who wished to join her cause would share blood with her, binding themselves to her line forever. The oath created a biological and spiritual connection that made betrayal impossible. It allowed our people to trust each other again. It built our empire. Kelthrin opened the book and read from pages covered in alien text. The sacred law states that any who share blood with the royal line become part of that line. They are bound to serve and protect the royal family until death. In return, the royal family must protect and provide for them. This bond cannot be broken. It is written into our very biology through mechanisms your science does not yet understand. Jake felt his stomach sink. "I didn't know. I was just trying to save her life." "Ignorance does not change reality," Kelthrin said. "You have the princess's blood flowing through your veins. She has yours. The bond has been formed. By our most sacred laws, you are now bound to serve Princess Lyria for the rest of your life." The murmuring in the throne room grew louder. Some Veltrans shouted in their own language. Jake did not need a translation to understand they were angry. A Veltran in red robes pushed forward from the crowd. "This is an abomination," he shouted in English, clearly wanting Jake to understand. "No alien has ever been bound to the royal blood. This human contaminates our most sacred tradition. He must be executed before he pollutes our line further." Other voices joined his. Jake's hand instinctively moved toward his hip, looking for a weapon that was not there. The guards around the room tensed, their own weapons humming to life. "Silence." Queen Cerinthia's voice cracked through the room like thunder. The crowd fell quiet immediately. "Duke Vexeron, you forget yourself. I did not grant you permission to speak." The Velthron in red robes bowed stiffly, but Jake could see the hatred in his eyes. The Queen looked at Jake again. "You see the problem, Lieutenant Morrison. Half my court wants you dead. They see you as a threat to thousands of years of tradition, but I cannot simply execute you. The Sanguine Oath is sacred. To kill someone bound to the royal blood would be to violate our most fundamental law." "Then let me go," Jake said. "I'll return to human space. I'll never come back. Your tradition stays pure and I go home. Everyone wins." "It's not that simple." Princess Lyria spoke for the first time. Her voice was cold and sharp. "The Sanguine Oath does not end with distance. Our blood is mixed. Our life forces are connected. If you die, I'm weakened. If I die, you are weakened. The bond exists whether we like it or not." She stepped down from the platform and walked toward him. Jake forced himself not to step back. Lyria stopped just a few feet away, close enough that he could see his reflection in her alien eyes. "I did not ask for this," she said quietly, though her voice carried through the silent throne room. "I did not ask to have my blood contaminated by a primitive alien species. I did not ask to be bound to someone who knows nothing of our ways, our culture, or our traditions. But here we are, Lieutenant Morrison, bound together by your impulsive decision to save my life." "I'm sorry," Jake said, and he meant it. "I really am. But I won't apologize for saving you. That's not who I am." Something flickered in Lyria's eyes. Surprise, maybe? Or respect. It was gone too quickly for Jake to be sure. Queen Cerinthia stood from her throne. "I have made my decision," she announced. "Lieutenant Jake Morrison will remain in the Velthran Empire. He will be given quarters in the royal palace and assigned a mentor to teach him our ways. He will serve as a royal guardian, bound by the Sanguine Oath to protect Princess Lyria with his life." The crowd erupted in shouts of protest. The Queen raised her hand and they fell silent again. "However," she continued, "I am not unreasonable. I understand that Lieutenant Morrison has a life among his own people. Therefore, I propose an exchange. He will remain here while we negotiate the details of his service. In return, I will offer something humanity desperately wants: peace." Jake's head snapped up. "Peace? The war between our peoples is foolish," the Queen said. "It started from misunderstanding and has continued from pride. Both sides have lost too much. If you agree to accept your role as a royal guardian, Lieutenant Morrison, I will sign a formal peace treaty with humanity. The war ends. Both our species can move forward." Jake felt the weight of the entire room pressing down on him. The Queen was giving him an impossible choice. Accept slavery to an alien empire or let the war continue. How many more people would die if he said no? How many humans and Velthrons would be killed because he wanted to go home? "If I refuse?" he asked. "Then I will return you to your people," the Queen said. "But without a peace treaty, the war continues. And make no mistake, Lieutenant Morrison, we will win eventually. The Velthron Empire has resources and technology that humanity cannot match. Your people will be conquered or destroyed. It might take years, but it will happen. You're blackmailing me." "I'm offering you a choice," the Queen corrected. "A difficult one, certainly, but a choice nonetheless." Jake looked at Princess Lyria. She stared back at him with that same cold expression. He could not read her. Could not tell if she wanted him to accept or refuse. She was as alien to him as the crystal throne behind her. He thought about his friends on the Valiant. About Captain Danny Wright, who had saved his life twice during combat. About all the soldiers on both sides who were dying for a war that no one really wanted anymore. He thought about going home, about seeing Earth again, about having a normal life. Then he thought about what it meant to be a soldier. To sacrifice for others. To do the hard thing because it was the right thing. "I'll stay," Jake said quietly. "I'll be your royal guardian or whatever you want to call it. Just end the war." Queen Cerinthia nodded slowly. "Then it is decided. Let it be known throughout the Empire that Lieutenant Jake Morrison is hereby declared a ward of the royal house, bound by the Sanguine Oath to serve Princess Lyria. And let it also be known that as of this moment, the war between the Velthran Empire and humanity is ended." The throne room erupted in chaos. Some Velthrans cheered. Others. Jake's quarters in the royal palace were larger than his entire family home back on Earth. Crystal walls let in natural light from the purple sky outside. Water features built into the floor created a peaceful sound that should have helped him relax. Instead, Jake spent most of his first night pacing the room like a caged animal. He was trapped on an alien world, bound by blood to a princess who clearly hated him, surrounded by people who wanted him dead. Sleep did not come easily. When it finally did, Jake dreamed of the Valiant, of his friends, of home. He woke up reaching for a communicator that was not there, wanting to tell Captain Danny Wright that he was okay. But he had no way to contact anyone. The Velthrons had taken everything from him except the clothes on his back. Morning came with a knock on his door. Jake opened it to find an elderly Velthron standing in the hallway. This one's skin patterns had faded to a pale silver, and his eyes held the weight of many years. He wore simple gray robes that looked comfortable rather than fancy. "Lieutenant Morrison," the old Velthron said in perfect English. "I am Kethris, former captain of the Royal Guard. The Queen has assigned me to be your mentor. I will teach you our language, our customs, and how to stay alive in this palace." "Stay alive?" Jake repeated. "Come," Kethris said. "Walk with me. We have much to discuss, and the walls have ears." They walked through the palace gardens. Alien plants in impossible colors grew in careful patterns around them. Small creatures that looked like birds made of light flitted between the branches. It was beautiful, but Jake could not enjoy it. He was too aware of the guards watching from a distance and the occasional noble who stopped to stare at him with undisguised hatred. "You need to understand something," Kethris said as they walked. "Half the court sees you as an abomination that must be destroyed. They believe you have contaminated the royal bloodline with your human genetics. They see you as a threat to thousands of years of tradition." "The Queen said I'm protected by the Sanguine Oath," Jake said. "The Queen said many things," Kethris replied. "But words only protect you if people choose to follow them. There are nobles in this court who believe the law should be changed. And there are others who don't care about the law at all. You need to learn to protect yourself, and quickly." As if to prove his point, 3 young Velthron nobles stepped into their path. They wore expensive clothing and carried themselves with the arrogance of people who had never been told no. The leader, a tall male with bright green patterns on his skin, looked Jake up and down with disgust. "So this is the human contamination," he said in English, "even uglier than I imagined." Jake felt anger flash through him but forced it down. "If you'll excuse us, we were just leaving." "I don't excuse you," the noble said. He moved closer, invading Jake's personal space. "You should not be here, human. You should be dead." "Perhaps we can arrange that." Kethris stepped between them. "Lord Tarvin, you forget yourself. This human is under the Queen's protection." "The Queen is weak," Tarvin said. "She ends a war we were winning because she's afraid of fighting. And now she brings an alien into our sacred palace. How long before she invites more of them? How long before humans are walking our streets, breeding with our people, destroying everything we are?" "We're done here," Kethris said firmly. He put a hand on Jake's shoulder and guided him away. But Tarvin was not finished. "Run away, human. But you can't hide forever. Accidents happen in the palace. People fall from high places. Food gets poisoned. Guards sometimes fail to arrive in time. You will die here and everyone will be happier for it." Jake kept walking, but his hands were clenched into fists. He had faced enemy soldiers before. He could handle threats. But this was different. This was constant, unavoidable hatred that followed him everywhere. "Welcome to court life," Kethris said quietly. "That will happen every day until they either accept you or kill you." "Great," Jake muttered. They continued to a private training room deep in the palace. Kethris sealed the door behind them and gestured for Jake to take a seat on one of the benches built into the wall. "Now we talk honestly," the old Velthron said. "I served Queen Cerinthia's father and her grandfather before that. I have seen much in my long life, and I will tell you something that few others know. The Queen did not keep you here just because of the Sanguine Oath." Jake looked up. "What do you mean?" "The Velthron Empire is dying," Kethris said bluntly. "Oh, we look strong from the outside. We have vast fleets and control hundreds of worlds. But inside we are rotting. The noble families fight for power while ignoring the people they're supposed to serve. Corruption spreads through every level of government, and tradition has become a cage that prevents us from adapting to a changing galaxy." He sat down across from Jake. "The Queen wants to reform the Empire. She wants to reduce the power of the nobles and give more rights to common people. She wants to end the caste system that has existed for 10,000 years. But change is hard, especially when those in power benefit from the way things are." "What does this have to do with me?" Jake asked. "You are proof that change is possible," Kethris said. "You, an outsider, an alien. Someone who should be impossible to bind to the royal blood according to everything we thought we knew. Yet here you are. The Sanguine Oath accepted you. That means our most sacred tradition is not as rigid as the nobles claim. If an alien can be bound to the royal line, what else might be possible? Jake shook his head. So I'm what, a political symbol? You are a living argument that the Empire can evolve without breaking, Kethris said. But that makes you dangerous to those who profit from the current system. Duke Vexerin and his allies will not rest until you are dead. They see you as the first crack in a dam. If you survive, if you prove that change is possible, their power crumbles. Then why did the Queen put me in this situation? Jake demanded. Why not just send me home and find another way to reform? Because opportunities like you don't come often, Kethris said. And because Princess Lyria needs you whether she admits it or not. Before Jake could ask what that meant, an explosion rocked the palace. The floor shook beneath them. Alarms began blaring throughout the building. Kethris jumped to his feet with surprising speed for someone his age. What was that? Jake asked. Nothing good, Kethris said. He grabbed a weapon from a hidden panel in the wall and tossed another to Jake. Can you shoot? I'm a soldier, Jake said, checking the alien weapon. It was similar enough to human designs that he could figure it out. They ran into the hallway. Smoke filled the air. Guards rushed past them toward the source of the explosion. Kethris grabbed one of them. What happened? He demanded. Bombing in the East Wing, the guard said. Near Princess Lyria's quarters, Jake's blood went cold. The sanguine oath suddenly flared to life inside him, a feeling he had not experienced before. It was like someone had grabbed his heart and squeezed. He could feel something was wrong, could sense pain and fear that was not his own. Lyria, he said. He ran toward the East Wing before Kethris could stop him. His combat training took over, moving him through the smoke and chaos on autopilot. Other guards tried to stop him, but he pushed past them. The feeling in his chest grew stronger, pulling him forward like a compass pointing north. He found Princess Lyria in a destroyed hallway. Part of the ceiling had collapsed. She was trapped under rubble, bleeding from a cut on her head. 2 guards lay dead nearby, killed by the blast. Lyria was trying to move a beam off her leg, but it was too heavy. Jake dropped beside her and grabbed the beam. Stop struggling. Let me help. You, Lyria said. Her voice was weak with pain. Why are you here? I felt you were in trouble, Jake said. He strained against the beam, his muscles burning. It was incredibly heavy, but fear gave him strength. With a final heave, he lifted it enough for Lyria to pull her leg free. He dropped the beam and checked her injuries. Your leg is broken, he said, and you have a head wound. We need to move before this ceiling collapses completely. Why would you help me? Lyria asked. She stared at him with those alien eyes. And for the first time, Jake saw something other than coldness in them. Confusion maybe, or fear. I have been nothing but hostile to you. I have made it clear that I wish you had never saved me. Because you're hurt, Jake said simply. And because whatever this oath thing is, it won't let me leave you in danger. Now stop talking and let me carry you. He lifted her as carefully as he could. Lyria was taller than human women but weighed less than he expected. She did not protest as he carried her away from the destroyed hallway. Behind them, more of the ceiling collapsed with a crash. Kethris met them at the end of the corridor with medical personnel. They took Lyria from Jake's arms and rushed her toward the medical wing. Kethris grabbed Jake's shoulder. How did you know where she was? He asked. I just knew, Jake said. His heart was still pounding. I felt it. Is that the sanguine oath? Part of it, Kethris said. The bond lets you sense when the one you're bound to is in danger. It also compels you to protect them. You could not have left her even if you wanted to. Someone tried to kill her, Jake said. This wasn't an accident. No, Kethris agreed. It was not. And I suspect we will find that this is only the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, there were 3 more attempts on Princess Lyria's life. Someone poisoned her food, but Jake's new instincts warned. 3 months passed since Jake Morrison had saved Princess Lyria's life for the first time. Now he had saved her at least a dozen more times. The assassination attempts came regularly, each one more clever than the last. Someone in the palace wanted her dead and had resources to keep trying until they succeeded. Jake's life had become a strange routine. Mornings with Kethris, learning Velthran language and combat techniques. Afternoons shadowing Princess Lyria through her royal duties, always watching for threats. Evenings studying Velthran history and culture, trying to understand the people he now lived among. Nights spent in light sleep, always ready to respond if the sanguine oath warned him of danger. The bond between him and Lyria had grown stronger with time. Jake could now sense her emotions as vague impressions. When she was angry, he felt heat in his chest. When she was sad, a cold weight settled in his stomach. It was uncomfortable and intimate in a way that made him feel like he was invading her privacy, but he could not turn it off. Lyria had changed her attitude toward him completely. She no longer treated him as an unwanted burden. She actually talked to him now, asking questions about Earth and humanity. She laughed at his stories about human military life. She had started calling him Jake instead of Lieutenant Morrison, but there was still a distance between them, a wall that neither of them seemed able or willing to cross. They were bound by blood and oath, thrown together by circumstance, but they were not friends. Not really. That changed on a warm afternoon when the Queen announced a state visit to a frontier colony world called Keleth. The colony had been hit hard by rebel attacks recently, and the royal family needed to show support. Princess Lyria would lead the delegation, and where Lyria went, Jake had to follow. The journey took 2 days aboard a royal transport ship. Jake spent most of it feeling sick. Space travel affected humans and Velthrons differently, and he had not built up the tolerance yet. Lyria found him in his quarters looking green and miserable. "You look terrible," she said. "Thanks," Jake muttered. "That makes me feel so much better." She sat down beside him. "Why didn't you take the medicine the ship's doctor offered?" "I did. It didn't help." Lyria studied him for a moment, then placed her hand on his forehead. Her skin was cool and smooth. Jake felt a tingle of energy pass between them, something flowing through the sanguine oath connection. The nausea immediately decreased to a manageable level. "Better?" she asked. "Much," Jake said, surprised. "What did you do?" "The bond works both ways," Lyria explained. "I can share my strength with you just as you share yours with me when I'm in danger. I should have taught you this earlier." "I apologize." "Don't apologize," Jake said. "You don't owe me anything." "I owe you my life several times over," Lyria said quietly. She pulled her hand back but did not move away. "Jake, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay, do you hate this?" she asked. "Being bound to me? Being trapped in a life you never chose? I know you gave up everything to end the war, but if you could go back and change it, would you let me die?" Jake thought about it. Really thought about it. "I won't lie. This isn't the life I imagined. I miss my friends. I miss Earth. I miss being able to walk down a street without people staring at me like I'm some kind of monster." Lyria looked down at her hands. "I understand." "But," Jake continued, "if I went back to that moment in the medical bay, I would make the same choice. Not because of the war or politics or any of that, but because you deserve to live. Everyone deserves a chance to live. That hasn't changed, even though it cost you everything." "Even then," Jake said. "I'm a medic, Lyria. Was a medic, whatever. Saving lives is what I do. It's who I am. I can't change that any more than you can stop being a princess." Lyria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was soft. "I have been thinking about us, about this bond. I have been treating it as a curse, something forced upon us. But perhaps I have been looking at it wrong." "What do you mean?" "You are the first person in my life who has no agenda," she said. "Everyone else wants something from me. Power, influence, access to my mother. But you just want to keep me alive. There is something pure about that, something I have never experienced before." Jake did not know what to say to that, so he just sat there, feeling the gentle connection of the sanguine oath humming between them. They arrived at Keleth the next morning. The colony was a rough place, barely civilized compared to the gleaming capital. Jake could see the damage from rebel attacks everywhere. Burned buildings, makeshift shelters, people who looked tired and scared. The greeting ceremony was tense. The colonial governor seemed nervous, and the crowd that gathered to see Princess Lyria was smaller than expected. Jake's combat instincts were screaming warnings, but he could not identify a specific threat. Something was wrong, but he did not know what. The ceremony was held in the main square of the largest settlement. Princess Lyria gave a speech about the Empire's commitment to protecting its people. She promised aid and additional security forces. The crowd listened politely, but Jake could see skepticism in their faces. They had heard promises before, then everything went to hell. The explosion came from a building on the east side of the square, then another from the west, then a third from the south. The crowd screamed and ran in panic. Weapons fire erupted from multiple directions. This was not an assassination attempt. This was a full military assault. Jake grabbed Lyria and pulled her behind a stone barrier as energy bolts sizzled through the air where she had been standing. The royal guards formed a protective circle, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Attackers in unmarked armor poured into the square from every direction. "We need to move," Jake shouted over the noise. "This position is indefensible." "The people," Lyria said, looking at the panicking civilians caught in the crossfire. "We cannot leave them." "We don't have a choice," Jake said. He fired his weapon at an approaching attacker, hitting center mass. The figure went down. "If you die, this colony loses any hope of getting help." A royal guard fell beside them, dead before he hit the ground. Another guard dragged the governor toward a transport vehicle, but it exploded before they reached it. This was a coordinated attack, planned and executed with military precision. Someone had known exactly when and where the princess would be. Jake pulled Lyria to her feet. "Run! Now!" They ran through the chaos with half a dozen guards surrounding them. Jake's training took over, moving him through the battlefield on pure instinct. He shot attackers, found cover, kept moving. The sanguine oath burned in his chest like a fire, focused entirely on keeping Lyria alive. They made it to a side street when an attacker with a heavy weapon appeared on a rooftop. Jake saw the weapon tracking toward Lyria. He did not think. He just moved. He threw himself in front of her as the weapon discharged. The impact felt like being hit by a truck. Jake flew backward and hit the ground hard. He could not breathe. His chest was on fire. He looked down and saw his armor was scorched and cracked. Blood spread across his uniform. The shot had hit him in the chest, and even with armor, the damage was severe. "Jake!" Lyria's scream sounded distant. She dropped beside him, her hands pressing against his wound. No. Stay with me." "Get out of here," Jake managed to say. Blood filled his mouth. "Leave me. Never," Lyria said fiercely. "You do not get to die for me. I will not allow it." She closed her eyes, and Jake felt the sanguine oath activate in a way it never had before. Energy flowed between them, but in reverse. Lyria was sharing her life force with him, pushing her own vitality into his failing body. It was incredibly painful, like fire and ice at the same time, but it was working. The bleeding slowed. The pain decreased slightly. The remaining guards fought off the attackers while Lyria knelt in the street, holding Jake and keeping him alive through sheer force of will. When reinforcements finally arrived and secured the area, Jake was still conscious. Barely. They evacuated him to a medical ship. The doctors worked on him for hours. When he finally woke up, he was back in the palace medical facility, the same place he had recovered after first saving Lyria. This time she was sitting beside his bed, holding his hand. "You are an idiot," she said when his eyes opened. Tears ran down her face, leaving trails that glowed faintly. "A stupid, brave, wonderful idiot." "Saved you again," Jake said weakly. "Yes, you did," Lyria said. She squeezed his hand. "But I saved you too. The bond works both ways, remember? We kept each other alive." Jake tried to sit up, but the pain stopped him. "What happened at the colony?" "Rebels," Lyria said. Her expression hardened. "Or so they want us to believe. The attack was too coordinated. Someone knew exactly where I would be and when. There is a traitor close to the throne, Jake. Someone who wants me dead badly enough to massacre civilians to achieve it. We'll find them," Jake said. "Yes," Lyria agreed. "We will. Together." She leaned down and pressed her forehead against his, a Veltron gesture of deep respect and affection. Through the sanguine oath, Jake could feel her emotions clearly for the first time. Fear that she had almost lost him, relief that he survived, and something else, something warm and growing that neither of them had words for yet. "I was so afraid," Lyria whispered. "When you fell, I felt it through the bond. Jake could not sleep. It was past midnight in the palace, and his mind would not stop racing. The attack on Keleth colony kept replaying in his thoughts. Something about it bothered him, some detail that did not fit. He got out of bed and pulled on simple clothes, then made his way through the dark corridors toward the palace archives. Since becoming Princess Lyria's guardian, Jake had been granted access to most of the palace. He used that access now to search through reports and records. He was looking for patterns, connections, anything that might explain who wanted Lyria dead and why. The archives were massive, filled with thousands of years of Veltron history. Jake focused on recent events, pulling up reports of the rebel attacks across the Empire. He mapped them out, looking at dates and locations. A pattern emerged that made his blood run cold. Every major rebel attack in the past year had happened right before the Queen announced a new reform. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Someone was using the rebels to create chaos that made the Queen's changes look dangerous. When people were scared, they wanted stability, not reform. Jake dug deeper. He pulled financial records that he probably should not have access to, but nobody had thought to restrict a simple human's clearance. He traced money flows from the royal treasury. Large sums had been disappearing, hidden in the complex transactions that were clearly meant to be overlooked. Then he found something that made his hands shake. The transactions all went through accounts controlled by Duke Vexeron and several other high-ranking nobles. The same nobles who had been most vocal about opposing the Queen's reforms. The same ones who had called for Jake's execution when he first arrived. This cannot be real, Jake whispered to himself. He was looking at evidence of treason at the highest levels of government. What cannot be real? Jake spun around to find Princess Lyria standing in the doorway. She wore sleeping clothes and looked like she had just woken up. Through their bond, Jake had felt her approaching, but he had been too focused to register it consciously. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I felt you through the bond," Lyria said, walking into the room. "You were agitated, excited. I thought something was wrong." Jake gestured at the screens displaying his research. "Something is very wrong. Look at this." He showed her everything he had found. The timing of rebel attacks, the missing money, the accounts controlled by Duke Vexeron. Lyria's face went pale as she processed the implications. "You are saying that Duke Vexeron is funding the rebels?" she asked. "Not just funding them," Jake said. "I think he is controlling them. The rebels are not fighting for freedom or reform. They are tools being used to destabilize your mother's rule." Lyria sat down heavily in a chair. "This makes no sense. Why would nobles fund rebels? They have the most to lose if the Empire falls into chaos." "Do they?" Jake asked. "Think about it. Your mother wants to reduce noble power and give more rights to common people. If the Empire is at war with rebels, she cannot focus on reforms. And if things get bad enough, the people might demand a new ruler, someone who promises to restore order. Someone like Duke Vexeron," Lyria said slowly. "He has been positioning himself as an alternative to my mother for years. He claims she is too soft, too willing to change traditions." Jake pulled up another file. "There is more. Remember the attack that first brought us together? The ambush on your diplomatic convoy? The rebels attacked us," Lyria said. "According to the official report, yes," Jake said. "But I went through the tactical analysis. The attackers knew exactly where your convoy would be and when. They had weapons specifically designed to penetrate royal ship shields. And they focused their attack entirely on your ship, ignoring the others until you were disabled." Lyria stared at him. "You think it was not rebels at all?" "I think it was an assassination attempt made to look like a rebel attack," Jake said. "You are the heir to the throne, Lyria. If you died, your mother would be devastated. She might even step down. And the council would choose a new ruler." "Duke Vexeron is on the council," Lyria whispered. "Exactly," Jake said. "And every assassination attempt since then has been blamed on rebels too. But they were all too professional, too well-informed. Someone in the palace has been feeding information to the attackers." Lyria stood up and paced the room. Jake could feel her emotions through the bond. Shock, anger, fear. "If you are right, then we are surrounded by traitors. We cannot trust anyone." "We can trust Kethris," Jake said. "And the Queen. But beyond that, we need to be careful who we talk to." "We need proof," Lyria said. "Real proof, not just financial records and timing coincidences. If we accuse Duke Vexeron without solid evidence, he will deny everything and use it to make us look paranoid." Jake thought about it. "Then we need to follow the trail further. Find out who the rebels really are and prove they are taking orders from the Duke." "How do we do that?" "We go undercover," Jake said. "We track down the rebels ourselves and see where the trail leads." Lyria looked at him like he was crazy. "You want us to go into the criminal underworld?" "Jake, I am the heir to the throne. I cannot just disappear into the streets. Can you think of a better way?" Jake asked. "We need evidence, and the only way to get it is to find the rebels and follow their connection back to Duke Vexeron." Lyria was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Very well. But we tell Kethris and my mother what we are doing. If we both disappear without explanation, it will cause panic. They woke Kethris first. The old warrior listened to Jake's explanation and studied the evidence with an experienced eye. His expression grew darker with each passing minute. "This is worse than I feared," Kethris said finally. "I knew there was corruption in the court, but I did not realize the conspiracy went this deep." "You believe me?" Jake asked, surprised. "I have served this royal family for 50 years, Kethris said. "I have seen Duke Vexeron's ambition grow over that time. He has always wanted the throne, but he was born to a lesser house. The only way he can rule is if the current royal line is destroyed or discredited." He looked at Lyria. "Your mother needs to know about this." Queen Cerinthia took the news better than Jake expected. She listened to their explanation without interrupting, her face betraying nothing. When they finished, she was silent for a long time. "I have suspected something like this for months," she finally said. "But I had no proof, only instinct. Duke Vexeron is clever. He leaves no obvious trails." "We want to investigate further," Lyria said. "Jake and I can go undercover and track the rebels to their source." "Absolutely not," the Queen said immediately. "It is too dangerous." "Mother, we have to do this," Lyria argued. "If we expose the conspiracy, we can end the rebel attacks and secure your reforms. But we need solid proof." "You could be killed," the Queen said. "Both of you." "People are trying to kill us anyway," Jake pointed out. "At least this way we are taking the fight to them instead of waiting for the next assassination attempt." The Queen looked between them, then sighed. "You have both become too similar, stubborn and willing to take insane risks." She stood and walked to the window. "Very well. You may investigate, but you will take precautions. You will check in regularly, and if I sense that you are in over your heads, I will pull you out immediately." "Thank you, Mother," Lyria said. "Do not thank me yet," the Queen said. "You are about to enter a world that does not play by palace rules. Stay alert, trust each other, and come back alive." 2 days later, Jake and Lyria left the palace disguised as common travelers. Jake wore simple clothes that hid his human features under a hood. Lyria had dulled her skin patterns with makeup and wore the plain garments of a lower caste worker. They looked nothing like a princess and her royal guardian. Kethris had given them contacts in the city underworld, people who owed the crown favors and could point them toward the rebels. Their first stop was a bar in the industrial district where information was bought and sold like any other commodity. The bar was dark and smelled of alien alcohol and unwashed bodies. Every eye turned to them when they entered. Jake kept his hand near his concealed weapon and used the sanguine oath to stay connected to Lyria. If things went bad, they would know instantly. They found their contact at a back table. He was a scarred Velthron named Torvik, who made his living selling information to anyone with money. Kethris had said he was reliable as criminals got anyway. "You are looking for rebels," Torvik said after they exchanged coded phrases. "Dangerous question to ask in this city. People who ask questions about rebels tend to disappear." "We are not afraid," Lyria said, keeping her voice rough and lower class. Torvik studied them. "You should be. The rebels have been getting bolder. They have new weapons, new funding. Someone powerful is backing them. We want to meet them," Jake said. "We have skills they might find useful." Torvik laughed. "Everyone thinks they have skills. What makes you special?" Jake grabbed Torvik's wrist faster than the Velthran could react. He applied pressure to a nerve cluster, causing pain without leaving marks. "I know 100 ways to hurt people without killing them. I can break into secure facilities. And I hate the royal family as much as any rebel." "Is that special enough?" Torvik pulled his hand back, rubbing his wrist. "Maybe. There is a recruiter who comes to the factory district on 5th day. He looks for people with..." The holding cell was cold and dark. Jake and Lyria sat back to back, their hands bound with energy restraints that prevented them from using the sanguine oath effectively. They had been there for hours waiting for whatever came next. "I am sorry," Lyria said quietly. "This was my idea. I led us into a trap. We both walked into it," Jake said. "And we are not dead yet. That means there is still a chance." The door opened and Commander Drevok entered with 2 guards. He looked at his prisoners with satisfaction. "The Duke wants to meet you before he decides what to do with you. Consider it an honor. Not many people get an audience before they disappear." They were dragged through the station to a private section that was clearly reserved for someone important. The walls were decorated with expensive art, The floors were polished crystal. This was not a smuggler's hideout. This was a command center. Duke Vexeron waited in a large office that overlooked the station's docking bays. He was exactly as Jake remembered from the throne room. Tall, arrogant, dressed in expensive robes. But here, without the Queen's authority to restrain him, the Duke looked even more dangerous. "Remove their restraints," the Duke ordered. "Let them stand with dignity." The guards obeyed, though they kept weapons trained on the prisoners. Jake immediately checked on Lyria through their bond. She was afraid but trying not to show it. He sent her a pulse of reassurance through the connection. "Do you know who I am?" the Duke asked Jake. "You are Duke Vexeron," Jake said. "Traitor, criminal, the man behind the rebel attacks." The Duke smiled. So direct, so human. "That is what I like about your species, Lieutenant Morrison. No subtlety, but refreshingly honest." He walked closer. "And yes, I am behind the rebels. Behind all of it. The attacks. The chaos. Everything designed to show the Empire that Queen Cerinthia is too weak to rule." "Why tell us this?" Lyria demanded. "You must know we will expose you. Will you?" the Duke asked. "From a cell on a remote station that does not officially exist? I think not." He gestured to the window. "Look out there, Princess. Those ships are carrying weapons to rebel groups across the Empire. By the time your mother realizes where you are, if she ever does, the rebels will have launched coordinated attacks on a dozen worlds. The Empire will be in chaos, and the Council will demand a new ruler." "The sanguine oath will not allow you to harm me," Lyria said. "The law is clear." "The law," the Duke said with disgust. "That ancient tradition is exactly what holds our empire back. The sanguine oath, the royal bloodline. These things made sense 10,000 years ago, but now they are chains preventing us from adapting." He looked at Jake. "You are proof of that, human. You should never have been allowed to bond with royal blood. Yet here you are, a primitive alien bound to our most sacred tradition. It is an insult. So kill us and be done with it," Jake said. "Stop wasting our time with speeches," the Duke laughed. "Kill you? No. I have something far more useful in mind." He pulled up a holographic display showing the capital city. "I am going to let you go." Jake and Lyria exchanged confused looks. "You are going to return to the capital," the Duke continued. "You are going to tell the Queen everything you discovered. You will show her the evidence you collected. And then, in front of the entire court, I will demand trial by combat to prove my innocence." "Trial by combat," Lyria repeated. Her face went pale. "I see you understand," the Duke said with satisfaction. "It is an ancient law that even your mother cannot override. If I am accused of crimes against the crown, I have the right to prove my innocence through combat. I will choose a champion to fight for me. And you, dear princess, must choose a champion from those who carry royal blood." Jake felt sick as he understood. "There are only 3 people with royal blood. The Queen, Lyria, and me." "Exactly," the Duke said. "Queen Cerinthia is old and has not fought in decades. Princess Lyria is young and inexperienced in real combat. Which leaves you, Lieutenant Morrison, a human who has been training for only a few months. Against my champion." He gestured and another Veltron stepped out of the shadows. The warrior was massive, easily 7 feet tall with scars covering his visible skin. His eyes were cold and dead, the eyes of someone who had killed so many times it no longer affected him. This was a professional killer, a predator in Veltron form. "This is Warlord Kravik," the Duke said. "He has fought in 100 battles and never lost. He has killed more beings than you have saved, medic, and he will tear you apart in the arena while the entire Empire watches." "Why not just kill us now?" Lyria demanded. "Why this complicated plan?" "Because I need to appear legitimate," the Duke explained. "When I take the throne, I cannot be seen as a usurper who murdered the royal family. I must be the noble who was wrongly accused and proved his innocence through sacred law. The people will accept me then. They will even thank me for restoring order after your mother's weak leadership caused such chaos." He walked to his desk and picked up the data crystal containing their evidence. "I will return this to you. Let you present it to the court. It will make my trial even more dramatic when I am declared innocent." "You are insane," Jake said. "I am practical," the Duke corrected, "and I am patient. I have been planning this for years, waiting for the right moment. When that human ship responded to your distress call, Princess, I thought my plans were ruined. But then Lieutenant Morrison did something unexpected. He created the Sanguine Oath, and suddenly I had a new tool to use. A human champion who cannot possibly defeat Kravik. It is perfect, he nodded to the guards. Take them to a ship. Send them home. Let them warn the Queen. It will not matter. By the ancient laws, my trial must happen, and when it does, the human will die, and my path to the throne will be clear. They were dragged back through the station and thrown onto a small ship. The ship was automated, programmed to return them to the capital. As they sat in the passenger compartment, bruised and exhausted, Lyria started to cry. He has won, she said. Even knowing his plan, we cannot stop it. The trial by combat is sacred law. My mother will have to allow it. Then I will fight, Jake said. And I will win. You cannot win, Lyria said desperately. Did you see Kravik? He is a professional killer. You are a medic who has been learning combat for a few months. He will slaughter you. Maybe, Jake admitted. But I have to try. No, Lyria said. She grabbed his hand. I will not allow it. I will fight in your place.